This is an introduction to the 5 steps of the learning cycle. These are the 5 steps. The first is prior knowledge, that is what your students already know. Second is presenting them new material. Thirdly, setting them a challenging task. And fourthly, giving them feedback so that they can make an improvement. And lastly, repetition to secure those long-term memories. Let's have a look and see how these work together in the brain. So this is the diagram which we'll end up building. You can see the 5 stages here. Firstly, prior knowledge. Secondly, presenting new material, challenging task, feedback and improve, and repetition. Let's build it step by step. So this little bit here represents the existing or prior knowledge of the student, or it could be your knowledge of teaching, for instance. And we know that memories in the brain consist of links between brain cells. So this is what I've represented here. Now, it's at the back of the brain and lower down, but that's not to do with the way the brain learns. Memories are formed all over the brain. It's simply to create space in the diagram. This represents the new knowledge which you want your students to learn. And we know that knowledge consists of facts linked together in some way. So this could represent the history lesson which you're about to teach on Napoleon's invasion of Russia. So there are some facts which the students need to know, Napoleon and Russia and 1815 and France and what have you. And it is possible for them to learn it in this disconnected way, but they will forget it quite easily, and also it won't make sense. In order for a student to understand something, to get that sort of aha, I get it now moment, they have to be able to link the new knowledge to what they already know. We've all had the experience of going around our classroom and having a student say that they didn't understand, and then you explain it a little more, and suddenly they say, oh yeah, I get it now. They usually have quite a happy experience from that, and what we think is happening is that these connections are giving them a bit of a dopamine rush, or something which makes them feel happy. Humans seem to like having understood or having learned something. So this is the task that we as teachers are trying to do, and when we've done that, we've done teaching. But of course it's not quite as easy as that. That's why we have to go through a series of steps. So the very first step, which we already mentioned, is prior knowledge. One of the most common reasons that students don't learn is because they lack the prior knowledge needed to link the new material, so that if they can't link the new material, they can't understand it, and if they can't understand it, they'll have great difficulty learning it other than by rote. So the first step is to find out what they know and to fill in any blanks. Now that means that you don't walk into the class and start teaching the material making assumptions about what the students already know. You have to alter the way you start to teach based on what you find from the prior knowledge assessment. So we're going to present the material to the students. So when students are first presented with new material, they retain about 5% of it. That means that some students will retain absolutely none, usually because they have no idea what you're talking about. And some students will retain a great deal, probably because they are already familiar with the material and their prior knowledge of the subject is quite good. However, as teachers, we wouldn't stop there. We wouldn't expect our students to know things simply from us having presented the new material. So stage 3 in the cycle is to set the students a challenging task. And this is something which people outside of education do not understand is such a skill. Every day as teachers we do this task. If we set our students a task which is too simple, we will simply be exercising their prior knowledge and no new learning will take place. If we set a task which is too hard, they won't be able to link it to anything they know, the question won't make sense, and no new learning will take place. Learning takes place in that sweet spot between too easy and too hard. It's a task which is a bit of a struggle. which they can get there by looking in the textbook, discussing with a neighbour, thinking it through, asking a question. This starts to form the long-term memories. Now, in the process of carrying out the task, they are likely to make mistakes. That's why feedback has been shown for decades to be one of the most effective things that you can do in the classroom. Feedback is best done as soon as possible, and certainly during the task. It's much less effective to give students feedback after they've completed the task, and especially it's ineffective if they are unable to make an improvement. So the very best thing is to get feedback during the task, and that there is a requirement to make an improvement. Clearly, if your task is one which has been already handed in, then one of the effective things to do if you're giving written feedback, for instance, is to give only the feedback and not give the mark until an improvement has been made. Even after this process, we are still aware that students will not have completed their learning. So the fifth stage in the learning cycle is repetition. When we look at this in more detail, we already know the number of repetitions and the timings of those repetitions which are most likely to form long-term memories. Essentially, if a student can make sense of the material, that is, if they can link it to their prior knowledge, and they repeat the pathway in their brain on 3 separate occasions, well spaced out, almost all students will form long-term memories. And remember, the task of us as a teacher is simply this: to create links between brain cells in the form of long-term memories. And this 5-step process is the most efficient way of doing it.